Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Village of Campton Hills Board of Trustees, October 21st, 2005. It is 7:04 p.m. Trustee Benetti?
Here.
Trustee Boatner?
Here.
Trustee Burson?
Here.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Here, and that's 2025.
2020, what did I say?
You said 2005.
2025, yes. Trustee Muir? Trustee Millette?
Present.
Trustee Muir?
Here.
And President Wodnicki is absent. And if we can get a motion to move Trustee Millette to President Pro Tem?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Millette?
Nay, no aye.
Patsy Smith?
Good evening. I noticed that you've got the motion for new bank signatories on the consent agenda, and I thought this would be a good time to bring this up. I mean, it's good to have more than one person sign checks, but what's even more important is a full segregation of duties in your finances. And so I printed something out, and it's just really important to make sure that anybody that has access to the cash books does not have access to the books. So you want to make sure that, and this article even talked about how in small municipalities you have to do things differently. And we clearly had to do that when I was in office because there weren't enough of us. So I'm just here to suggest that whether it's the board or the finance committee, somebody needs to regularly check to make sure that segregation of duties are being properly followed. And so I'll drop this off. Another comment is, first off, I'm thrilled to see a treasurer's report included in the board packet, and I would like to hope that's a monthly issue, that it's included, because it's really difficult as a citizen. We're 5/12 through the year, and you can't tell where things went over budget because you clump more than 1 month together, and it's difficult. So if you publish it monthly with the percentages showing, then you can look at it and say, okay, why is it like that? Because I assume you all have probably reviewed this, but you're only under budget in 2 line items. Miscellaneous revenues, you're under, and then and expenses, the administrative side is under. But building and zoning is 81% over budget for the 5/12 of the year. And so I think it's important that you review this and look at those areas and say, oh, if that's the case, we're going to have to pull back for the remainder of the year. So I'm just bringing it to your attention and reminding you that your citizens expect you to be fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Other public comment?
Scott Markwood wanted to make a comment?
Thank you. It was brought to my attention there's a typographic error in the consent agenda item for the KCOM grant applications. Those were intended to be $7,000 each. The sum total of 14 is correct. Just wanted to mention before you got to that section of the agenda.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Burson. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Trustee Muir. Well, she had her hand up. All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Millette?
Aye. Thank you all. All right, moving on to item 5, staff reports. Welcome back, Scott.
Thank you. want to go through the Public Works Committee minutes, which are in the packet, the draft minutes from the last meeting, and just mention a couple updates on a couple of the items in there. I won't touch on everything. The 2025 roadway program, 9 of the 11 streets have been completed. The next 2 will be within the next few weeks. Actually, work on that will be starting towards the end of this week and continuing into next. And you'll see a large pay estimate on next village board meeting for payment for that project. So that's all moving along as it should. That did include the ADA work within the Fox Mill subdivision. That was added to the contract, so that has been completed. Next item, Connors Road. That work is actually scheduled. It's been deferred a couple times, scheduled to take place on Friday of this week, weather permitting. So that'll be another one of the roadways taken care of. 5-year CIP discussion. The committee had some discussion and wanted to express their appreciation for some of the additional steps that the village has taken on funds and revenues to help close the gap on the 5-year capital improvement program. With some of the new taxes been implemented, the coordination with the Fox Mill HOA about funding for ADA improvements, those are a couple of positive steps that they wanted to acknowledge the board for their efforts for. Shodine, Grant, those are really just a couple highlights from that. I'd answer any questions.
And Scott, as long as you're here, why don't you brief the board of the behind-the-scenes work you're doing with CENTCOM and the HR Green stormwater that's going to be on the annex or the PUD preliminary discussion on the 30th. Just, you don't have to go into gory detail, but explain how much work you're doing and why you have big bills to be escrowed to reimbursed, and you're doing the villages to the village's benefit.
Correct. It's a large development, as you're all well aware, 900 units. Almost daily, we're back and forth with additional documents, submittals, address this change, such coordination. Even today, I think we received 4 additional documents. All of this goes to help fill out what will eventually be a complete packet for the PZC to consider. They have the majority of information. The engineering for the site looks pretty good. There's some stormwater issues to be addressed, but they are on top of it. They've been coordinating with KDOT on improvements along Bunker Road, drainage and such with that. There's still an additional review needed from Kane County DOT in regards to that to get that up to speed where we are. We do still not have a traffic study complete yet for the project. That's probably one of the larger incomplete missing items. We've got a summary statement, but not the full study. Plat documents received and such. So there's a lot of information back and forth for a project this size, as expected.
The traffic study, though, just so people don't see and get too alarmed, the local roads are the roads they're creating, that'll be the new streets for the development, and LaFox Road from the bypass and then south to Kesslinger will become a village road after we do a jurisdictional transfer and get some improvements to the road before they hand it to us broken. Well, as much as we can. But that's going to be the local road impact. The bunker is theirs. North of the bypass intersection of LaFox stays KDOT. And then you got an IDOT road in Route 38 and a county road, the bunker, LaFox, as well as Kesslinger. So the real impact and traffic study piece is on KDOT and IDOT roads. Our issues are going to be much more manageable and handled easily, and that's why we could have an IGA with KDOT that's going to come later, because KDOT is not working under our timeline, they're working under theirs. But they are very clear, and they have been since May, on what type of curb cuts to bunker and any access point. They've directed that, and how far north we have to go, even on the LaFox that will be ours, away from their intersection. So that's pretty much all the intersections you see on the preliminary plan are a result of KDOT saying that's where it can go, within 10, 20 feet. So KDOT has determined a lot of the pieces to this infrastructure, how it interacts on the road network. And that's some of the issues with the traffic study that has to be worked out, because KDOT wants different things than what we want and need.
Right, the
So-
locations of the intersections are fixed.
Yep.
Now it's the traffic study to work through the details of number of lanes of improvement, turn lanes, all of that. So
Now,
that's in progress.
To be crass and in my own way, it's a residential development. There's nothing more boring on traffic study than X amount of houses, 10 trips per day or whatever it is, you know what it is. It's harder when it's some different mixed-use development, or
Right.
if it's, something else like this. So this is almost, this is almost cookie cutter stuff.
Right, it is pretty straightforward. We
Yep.
just do not have the full information yet, nor does KDOT to be able to give
Yeah.
final direction on what is needed, but they are progressing on different submittals.
Yep. So there's no reason to be alarmed that it's not exactly completely created, because, as Mike said, this is not a complicated issue that is going to put us behind the eight ball in any fashion. Really isn't.
There were concerns raised at the PUD hearing about traffic at LaFox Road and Kesslinger. And, right, but as we understand, that intersection is going to dramatically change. So in the short run, when the bypass is completed, most of the traffic at that intersection is going to go away.
Right. And
Right.
There will be the reduction of the traffic that's currently on LaFox will transfer over as a through route to Bunker Road.
Most of it.
That's expected.
Right.
yes.
And then in time, as the development is built, and there are houses on either side of LaFox, and there's access onto LaFox from those areas, that's when you get to the X number of cars per day per house. And I mean, it's not that it's not a traffic study, but it sounds like it's the most basic type of traffic study that you would do.
Yeah, you can have like a second-year college
And
student.
so, the reason I bring it up is because a couple people mentioned this at the hearing, and I don't want to suggest that they were off base. I just think that we need to do a better job of educating people about how the traffic is likely to move. And so at least in the near term, if you're concerned about the safety of LaFox and Kesslinger, it's probably going to get better, right?
I would imagine once through traffic on LaFox moves over to Bunker, yeah, you're going to see a reduction at that corner.
So it might be a different conversation a decade from now, but for now, and probably a few years at least, you're going to see, I think, a reduction in traffic right at that point of LaFox and Kesslinger. And it seemed to be a pain point for some of the people in the area. So I wonder whether, I could say it or any of the rest of us could say it, but if you agree, it would maybe be more helpful if you could say it in a future communication.
Okay, yeah, we can do that, and we, as Trustee Millett had mentioned, we all kind of know what the results of the study are going to be based on counts, homes and such. But we can't fully comment, vet it until we see it.
Sure.
So,
But the people that are concerned, they're not sure what they're concerned about. It's a boogeyman that they can't quite characterize. So maybe we can help them get a handle on what the extent of the issue is.
Is something we could do once we have all that information and they have a complete submittal. But we have mentioned this before, is from an engineering perspective, there are no deal killers on this project with the status of where the engineering is at right now. Everything that needs to be resolved, we or the design engineer know how to get it solved.
And one of the other controversies, so you hear it from staff before you hear it from somebody at the public comment of the traffic study, is they have to study it in two conditions. One with the grade crossing eliminated by the Union Pacific,
Right.
and one with LaFox staying open at that grade crossing. The ICC is notoriously very favorable to
Getting rid of them.
the railroad request. And the railroad has an obvious reason to request closure because they've got a underpass and overpass in close proximity. And even Peck is another overpass, so they're gonna say we don't have a need and we have a lot of risk. And it won't be the village closing, but our ability to stop the railroad from requesting it, we can't promise to do something we don't have the wherewithal and the
No,
power or the history of any
We lose that 10 out
municipality
of 10.
doing that.
We lose a 10 out of 10. Trustee
Yeah.
Hoffensberger?
Can you give us sort of a brief background on just what happened with the one house that's going to have the 3 streets around it now? The white farmhouse that's on the corner, I believe it's on Kesslinger and LaFox, and they're going to have now a new road on the north side? How did that happen, and what is the background on that?
That simply, Scott, it's the fact that KDOT is not gonna give us an access to Bunker. Therefore, we have to access those townhomes through LaFox because we don't have an access point for a public road to touch Bunker. So the only way to access that 50 to 75 units that were projected in that little area next to the firehouse on Bunker and the train station, south of the train station existing today parking lot.
Trying to think of where that is. Okay.
The only way to access that point is through LaFox because KDOT will not let any curb cut onto Bunker because Bunker is supposed to be a bypass road at 45 to 55, and if you have points of entry into it, it decreases its safety and purpose as a bypass.
Right.
So it's a KDOT
And so that's the only point of access is on the other side of that house?
to get to that, yes.
There is an open space north of that house, and also KDOT will not permit an access point onto Kesslinger Road. from
I
that
was going to say,
neighborhood.
isn't there also Kesslinger? Okay.
So the only location is in that area. The latest revision of plans, the developer has moved a row of townhomes away from that house to provide additional space between the house and the new roadway.
With heavily landscaped instead of townhomes so there's been a option to try to address, but
Oh,
she
yeah.
probably doesn't understand that KDOT controls both Kesslinger and Bunker, so there's only one way to access it. And in an emergency, I think, Mr. Patzell even stated, there's an emergency, open the gate to the back of the
Right.
firehouse parking lot that you'll be able to access it in only,
In only emergency situations?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that either, so that.
yeah, it's a KDOT
KDOT
controls both
controlled
roads.
situation,
And
okay.
so that's the only way to do it.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
You good? Trustee Benetti?
Yeah, I think that resident's concern was being separated and being on an island because what's gonna happen is she's gonna have Kesslinger on one side, the access road on the other side, and she's gonna have Bunker in the back. It wasn't so much have. As well as LaFox in the front, and she feels like she's being separated from her neighbors, that she's being separated from, basically that historic area. And I've had numerous conversations with her, so So that really was the concern. And the other point I'll probably make, or I want to make, and may not be the right time, but we're making the assumption there's going to be less traffic. But I would tell you during school hours, morning and afternoon, with school buses, because I'm assuming that's the way school buses are going to get in and out of that area, and residents are going to be taking their kids to school and coming back, that during those time periods, the traffic could be significantly more than it is today. So, again, yeah, well, you're right. But again, looking down the road, hopefully traffic studies don't just do tomorrow.
Yeah. No, and the curb cut that's just on the north side of her property and it's located there, it's the standoff distance that KDOT has because Kesslinger and LaFox, they don't want a curb cut that's gonna go both east and west, too close to that intersection of Kesslinger and LaFox. So our hands are pretty much tied because KDOT controls what they allow, and it's in their book that they publish every year, and it's just a given fact that we can't deviate from.
Okay.
Let's hope we get the,
We feel her pain, but I have no way to alleviate her
No, I
pain.
get it.
maybe some of
But
the
I think somebody
landscaping
should
will help.
explain it to her, so.
I think we have, but.
Trustee Burson?
Relative to the level crossing on LaFox, I understand that historically when a railroad can say, well, we have this and we have that, and so we don't really need the level crossing, and they move to close it, they typically win that.
With or without any level of government protest.
And however, the community is not going to like that. I mean, they're just not going to like it one little bit, and they're going to blame us for it. And just like they're kind of blaming us for the road issues, because it's sort of complicated, and people would have to pay attention to maybe more inside baseball than they want to understand how it all works. And so it's going to be even worse for the level crossing. And so I'm wondering whether it's worth it for us to take a flyer at opposing this, understanding that we're probably not going to prevail, but I feel like we owe it to the people in LaFox to at least make the attempt.
And that, I think, Trustee Burson, is a timing issue, because if we don't take jurisdictional control, because we're working with KDOT on how they'll make improvements before we take LaFox,
They could have made the movement
before
it gets to us.
before it's ours.
And if that happens, then we say, well, sadly, we couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
But if we can,
Yeah. We can
I-
explore it.
it feels like we
I just
should.
don't want to not tell you something that could be controversial ahead of time.
The other thing that I wonder that just occurred to me right as we were all talking is my understanding is KDOT is unwilling to do curb cuts on Kesslinger or any of their routes these days that are closer than a quarter mile. Is that correct, approximately?
No, they have some closer, but they've got a generic
There's some closer, but they do have pretty strict
Right.
criteria.
Yeah.
So
660 feet or,
crazy out of the box idea, but what if we worked together to close LaFox and Kesslinger and put one or more curb cuts on Kesslinger that would ease the rest of this traffic planning? Is that even possible?
I've discussed it with KDOT engineers, which would be south, and it would be directly across on Kesslinger. You have that business park. It's not Mill Creek. It's Rich, yes. Yeah, Rich, yes. So they said the problem with that, the 962 acre Ryan Holdings, there's a farm in between what the Ryans currently own and that. Yeah, because that would be their ideal spot to have a curb cut and a light that would go both ways, and then they could do something with LaFox, you know, not being a curb cut. That's what they would ideally like, because then there's bigger standoff from Bunker to that point. They've looked at that, but we can't promise to do something when we don't control the farmer's dirt. So they have thought of that.
Thank you.
So you're not off base. They have actually
And-
designed it that way.
Good. Any other questions for Scott? Trustee Boatner?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Fox Mill, and noted in the minutes that they had the funding now to do the ADA improvements on all the crosswalks. And that's every crosswalk in the neighborhood. We're waiting for those to be completed before any resurfacing can be done, right?
I would recommend that, and given the size of Fox Mill, there's probably 10 or 12 miles of streets. That's going to be a multi-year program to do everything in that area. But we would recommend that the ADA sidewalk improvements be done in conjunction with the road project.
With the road project.
We work out cooperative cost sharing between the village and the HOA for their portion, but do them together at the same time.
And those roads in Fox Mill, are there any special considerations? I mean, our standard $300,000 a mile resurfacing program, does that apply to those roads as well? Or are there differences? Are those roads unique in any way?
We anticipate those are gonna cost more per mile, because you're gonna have some curb and gutter repair, even not just at ADA ramps, but deteriorated sections. You're going to have, with the curb and gutter section and drainage structures, you're gonna have some manhole adjustments. You may have some storm sewer, we don't know till we look at it. But typically, those are gonna cost more per mile, just because you have more assets that you have to take care of at the same time.
That makes sense. But now with this acknowledgement, these will be in the mix as we're going through the different roads with the robotics map, and these will now be contenders for resurfacing now. This was the box that needed to be checked?
This helps. The earliest planned improvements within Fox Mill are estimated in 2028. There's just a lot of other streets in poor shape ahead of them. So, but with this commitment, that can now keep that as a viable alternative to work on those roadways then.
Any other questions for Scott?
So just
Trustee
to follow
Benetti?
up on the Fox Mill piece, have we met with them? Have they?
No, I've only had conversations on 2 occasions with Jen Lehman,
Okay.
the representative of the HOA.
Because, I mean, I'll go on record, Fox Mill Board has not been cooperative in this, and I'm frustrated because I live in Fox Mill. And my last communication with them was they were moving ahead with the sidewalks. They weren't gonna wait. So that they have the funds and they were gonna do the sidewalks. So if there's a general plan that we want to do it all together, and I think that's what's been discussed, I don't think they're on board with it. So, I don't know how to get through to them because they don't want to meet with us, so.
We've
don't
had
know.
that standing invitation that Jen Lehman gave to the president. I expected that he was gonna meet with me last month or this month, and it's, the ball's in their court to come to discuss it.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So, I mean, I guess the only other alternative is to have a town hall type meeting with residents and see what they think. So,
Yeah, but then they'd accuse us of interfering with their HOA probably.
yeah, again, I'm frustrated being a resident there, so.
The HOA, yeah, the HOA,
The HOA controls the sidewalks and has the financial responsibility of the sidewalks and some of this.
financial, yes,
Yeah.
but they have to be to the standards that we have to enforce. And they should be made aware of that if they're not, and there's some advantage to them doing a lot of stuff on their own, because they have a layer of less annoyance not going through IDOT. But when we're doing the rest of this, an intersection, that's the best time to do that type of work anyway. So if we need to meet with them, I can meet with them. If somebody wants to set that up, that's fine.
It's not up to us, it sounds like.
We've
Balls in
issued
their
the
court.
invitation a couple times and
Yeah.
we're waiting for them.
Mike's a different.
possibly. So, all right, I don't know.
I'll re-engage Ms. Lehman
Okay.
as their representative and state it that way.
Cool. Any other trustee Muir?
Scott, does them helping with ADA help at all with KKCOM, or is it still because it's not considered,
In the roads within Fox Mill, we do not have any roads eligible for KCOM funding.
so, yeah, the Fox Mill Boulevard still wouldn't still meet, right? I'm just going from past,
Fox Mill Boulevard was applied for, but it was withdrawn because state would have required the removal of stop signs
oh,
at
that's
several
right.
of the crossroads. So, no, this does not have any impact on anything with KCOM because we can't use any funds there.
Okay, last call. All we good? All right, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Chief, you're up.
Thank you. Just a couple things. KCOM delayed getting their packets out, so trustee Clerk Johnson, thank you for getting the link on there. September monthly report, 454 calls for service, 11 accidents, 105 citations, and 1 arrest. And then just one other thing, this Saturday, October 25th, 6 to 9 is the Boo After Dark. That's with Campton Township Parks and Open Space. That's what Community Relations Committee was meeting about just now. Finalizing a few things. Should be a good time. Food truck, spooky hayride, bunch of free giveaways, including pumpkins and a bunch of other things. So thanks to everyone who helped put that together. And that is all I have.
Any questions for the chief, other than great job as always? None? Okay. Tim, you're up.
Oh, can you hear that? How's that? Some of the newer trustees might notice that I basically copied my previous financial report and just changed the numbers. I'm sorry, but the big number that you'll see every report is how much how far we are into the year. And as of the 5-year mark, we're about 42% in. So I kind of do my analysis based on any variances over or under 42%. As the former and I believe founding village president, right? Pointed out, the numbers look pretty good except for building and zoning. That's line 16, column G, that's 81.6%. You would think, oh my goodness, that is very high. But I believe a lot of the expenses that we expect to be, what's the right word? I don't want to throw it off.
Reimbursed.
Reimbursed?
So there's some reimbursements for the escrow of the development south of 38, but the other piece is when we took out 10 or 12,000 in legal fees for the building and zoning to balance the budget last April. We were doing it under the assumption we wouldn't have a plethora, high number of applications for subdivision or any plats change with, and we've had a higher number than normal go to the PZC for various work, and that involved some legal and also a lot more time with Jim Brown. So in that, we can't predict how many people have actions before the PZC. I think he's up to 6 for the year, and we thought there'd be 3 or 4 for the whole year. And there's the comp plan has been finished up, and the work involving on that with Jim Brown's time as well. So there is some easy things to point to that have increased the costs.
Right.
And we did reduce some of the legal in that department as well last spring.
So adding on to that, the overall general fund departments, which you would see through line 10 through 17, focuses on column G, almost all the big ones, the important ones, come in under 42% or close to it. The biggest one we always focus on is the police department. They're at 44%, but you know, a lot of their big expenditures have already occurred during the year. Plus, they had some utilization of officers that are not being incurred, and therefore, I think everyone on the board knows that some of that expense is going to be transferred to the village and board and legislative department. One thing I'd like to point out is I've been working on the audit for the past 2 months. This is the audit report from last year, and everyone would have gotten a copy of this. This is many, many pages. But what is interesting is the report I give you is 10 pages of revenue and expenditures. The auditor's report has 2 lines for expenditures, general government and public safety. So even though the report they do tie out, it's just presented differently. And the reason I bring that up is because I've kind of reached out to some of the trustees, and this is kind of segues into the comments the former village president made about being aware of, your expenditures and how much you're spending and being prudent. I'm more than welcome to come up with any report that you'd like. I think the last meeting, I presented a few schedules. If everyone wants to see those in a different format, year-to-date, month-to-date, quarter-to-date, I'm more than happy to do that. But I just want to get you the information that you feel is adequate to properly manage the village finances. As I said, the last 2 months I've been working with the auditors. I have one more scheduled to get them, and hopefully within a month, maybe not next report, but definitely the month after that, you will see the audited financial statements. So any questions?
Any questions for the treasurer? Trustee Benetti?
So how do I determine, and I guess to Patsy's point that she brought up, how do I know, and I'll speak for myself because I'm not sure if other people have the same question or not, but it says, it shows us what we've spent and what the percentage of the budget that we've spent, but it doesn't really show us month to month what's budgeted for the rest of the year. So how do I know that we're on track, that we're off track, and what the actual spend is for the rest of the fiscal year and compare it to what we've already spent and the percentage of the budget? So is there some mechanism out there that shows us what's to be spent so we can say, hey, we're getting to the point where we're way over budget based on what we're expected to spend the rest of the year? You see what I'm saying? More of a breakdown of a month-to-month spend versus just telling us how far off we are, what the variance is. Does that make sense?
Are you asking a question?
Well, I'm asking Tim a question, so.
Well, I think that ties back to kind of my very last comment is I will give you any information as you request it. If you want to see the breakdown, I can give you the P&L month to month, every single month what was spent for each P&L line. I'm more than happy to do that. I think last month I did it for revenues and I did it for legal.
Yeah, I think it would help me to see a monthly report that says, where we are in comparison, to the year and this is helpful in a way, but it doesn't give me the detail I think I would want to really be able to try and oversee and manage
Okay, so
this.
just to be clear, the request, for lack of a better term, is more period detail by month of what the actual spend has already been. So if I've
And
had-
what the anticipated, we have the budgeted numbers, but we don't know when the money's gonna be spent. So is it, is January a month that we spend more, or is December a month where we spend more in the police department because there's more events going on and stuff like that?
Right.
So, the police, is at 44% of the budget, but is there like a big expenditure coming up that we're not aware of? Right?
Right. Yeah, I guess I can put that in a narrative form, like, for example, the big dispatch expense has already entirely been incurred for the entire year, so you won't see that expense any further.
Right, I'm just saying from a business perspective, when I do a budget, I do a month-to-month budget, and I'm held accountable for how I perform on a month-to-month basis. This seems like it's just all lumped together. So I guess I just want more detail.
Okay.
And that's just me. If the others don't agree with that, that's fine, but.
Okay.
Trustee Burson, did you have something? Do you have something? No. Okay. Any other, trustee Boatner?
I do understand, so I have another question, but from what you were saying, Frank, for instance, you know, these summer months could be our real heavy expenditure months. We get to August and we're at 80% somewhere, but the rest of the year, it's anticipated that they're slow, we don't have a lot of expenses there. That's kind of what you're saying, so we would know, like, we're on track, we're at 80% halfway through the year, but that's on track. My question was, and we met about this, and it was very helpful meeting with you privately. Could you tell me, because I didn't see it in here, how do we know, or does this reflect when we have an offset in expenses like escrow that would, because like Patsy Smith, Miss Smith was a prime example of a resident who sees this and may see something that's way over budget. And being that we're accountable for this, is there a way, whether it's narrative or additional line item, or could you just explain how, you know, that message gets across, that some expenses are offset by
Sure.
escrow or anything else?
A perfect example you brought up when we spoke privately was grant revenue. The police department had a small amount of grant revenue that is offsetting the expense. You'd like to see that maybe broken out. You do not see it in my report. And the auditors have the same kind of, I don't want to say complaint, but they say, hey, Tim, you got to list that separately. And I know they're going to do it when they prepare the final financial statements, but they always ask me, did you break out the grant revenue? And I always, no, I don't. I just net it against expenses. They say, okay, well, you need to break that out because GAAP does not allow you to net them together. So, I mean, I've thought about it. I haven't implemented it yet, but I do think maybe we should just have that revenue line for grant, just so you can see it. To Frank's point, I'm sorry, trustee. Okay, thank you. I mean, the finances are lumpy. Some revenue comes in lumpy, some expenses come in lumpy. I mean, I think at least to start out to address your concerns, I can list, you know, the big revenue items that either have or haven't come in and you don't expect any further, or you could expect it later in the year, and the same with the expenditures. I mean, I can think of like 4 or 5 big expenditures, and I can give you an idea of historically how revenues have come in the past. And we can start with that, and if, you know, if that doesn't work, we can
Yeah,
try
like I
again.
said, to me, you know, again, I'll pick on the police department because they're the biggest budget item, but they're at 44%. But if there's 80%, or if we're gonna spend 80% more, call it, right, and we're gonna be over budget by 20% by the end of the fiscal year, I'd like to know that today versus after we go over budget, and we're all asking questions, why did we go over budget? You see what I'm saying?
I do.
I'd rather stay ahead of the curve than be behind the curve and asking questions after something happens. And that's why, to me, it's always good to have the numbers throughout the fiscal year as far as what's budgeted, so I know what's coming. So 44% sounds great today, but if it goes to 120 in 4 months, because we spent a bunch of money that we weren't, you know, that at least I wasn't aware of, you know, I just want to be proactive, I guess.
I got you.
So.
Trustee Muir?
Yeah, so you mentioned separate line items for grants. One thing I have a question on is there was some damage done to a squad car. And if I'm correct, that came out of the repair budgets for the squad car, but when it got reimbursed, it was put back into the general fund. I would think that I'd like to see the reimbursement for that repair actually be put back into the budget for the repair budget for the squad cars. I don't think it's right that it goes into general, under just general, instead of going back down into the police repair funds.
Okay. Yeah, you're correct. We put it in a miscellaneous income. But for the record, the police department is in their general fund, so.
Yeah, but it went into miscellaneous versus their GL
Right.
for
Right.
the repairs.
Okay.
So it's showing that there was this extra expense that really wasn't there and was reimbursed.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of where we're back from.
Back to an offset again.
What does the village trustees want to see to help manage the village finances and operations? And then what do I have to do to report for GAP? I believe GAP is going to require me to record it as miscellaneous income. They're not going to have me offset the expense. But the important thing is I get you the information and communicate it to you so you're aware of it. And we'll definitely, we can put that in our report internally and just let the auditors know when they present it under GAP.
Good? Good. Trustee Person?
One of the beautiful things about, digital stuff is that we can present things multiple ways. And in general, it's acceptable to maintain management books and GAP books, right? And so I think what we're talking about for our purposes as a board is generally management books. And you're correctly informing us about what GAP, which for people who don't know what that acronym means, generally accepted accounting principles, right? So GAP accounting, goes according to a certain set of very dry rules that aren't necessarily meaningful to any of the people who have to look at the money. And so when we do management books, then we're more interested in the things that we want to see in terms of managing, and sometimes those things are at odds, as you, I think, have well pointed out to us. So if I understand things correctly, if I may address Trustee Muir directly, what I think you'd like to see is not a distortion of the police expenses via the incident with the car, and a cancellation, more or less, of that expense versus the reimbursement that came for. So you'd like to see them like in the same account, one sort of offsetting the other.
If I may rebut, okay. I'd like to see it where it's, and if it's a management thing, fine. If it's a management report, fine. What I want to see is what the true budget figures are. I'd like to see where that repair budget didn't go over the estimated repair budget that we.
And so it doesn't count against,
Against the repair
Right.
GL, yeah,
because it was offset by the reimbursement.
right.
Right. Well, to be clear, I did not budget for an accident, but,
No one does.
but in defense of the chief, well, you ever met my three kids, trust me, you budget for an accident once in a while. But to your point, the chief's budget is gonna be overstated on expenses because we did not record it as an offset to expense.
Well, I can also make a note on the expenses too. I could do it as a note on the bottom that of $80,000, $40,000 was recovered from insurance, whatever the numbers are.
Sure.
Another option. Other questions for the treasurer? Excellent. All right. Thank you, Tim. All right. Oops, I turned my microphone off doing the records. All right. What are we at to now? I got to scroll all the way back to the top. We've got item. You're out, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
We've got action item. We've got one action item. Motion to approve resolution 2533, a resolution authorizing execution of agreement with SB Friedman Development Advisors. Mr. Administrator.
So moved.
Oh, sorry. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator, please present.
I think you had it electronically, but I passed out a hard copy. And what this will do, folks, is getting ahead of us a bit. If and when we do a TIF, and then we get into negotiations with Shodine as a developer on that, this would be the hourly rates that would be outside of that $30,000 contract that we approved 6 weeks ago for them to do the TIF eligibility study. This would be assisting staff, the treasurer, administrator, the lawyer, on helping to negotiate any deals in a redevelopment agreement for TIF dollars being expended in upfront or as it pay as it goes, or any kind of a deal point in a redevelopment agreement, what their rates would be if we engage them to assist us with the financial analysis and request that we will if there's a TIF that's eligible and we establish it, there will be a day that I would want to go to the bullpen with the guys that execute financial analysis of developers on a monthly basis to assist me on their requests, and then to structure a deal that's the most advantageous to the village as possible, and then to advise you of the pitfalls of doing A versus B. And I'd like that to get established. And we don't have to, approve it tonight, because you're not going to use this until, a later date, but it's just getting it set. And if we need any analysis from them, this just showing that we could engage them on some financials. And it's clearly outside the TIF eligibility contract.
Okay, trustee Burson, then trustee Muir.
I think you just said it at the very end, but I wanted to be clear about this. We've already approved, I believe it's $30,000, right? Which is for purposes of qualifying the TIF district and establishing eligibility, right?
Yes.
So doing accounting work and projections and.
Saying if it meets the legal justification to
Right.
have a TIF in this
And
environment.
so this is an additional possibly $19,200 maximum, right?
Yes.
Right, or 19.5, I'm sorry. 19.5, that is for additional consultation related to how we might utilize or disperse that money? Is that correct?
Or set up deals.
So this is, this portion of the engagement with SB Friedman is to review the developer's proposed budget and development plan, and to balance the but-for test, as Administrator Rooney said, to check the developer's numbers to make sure that if the property is eligible for a TIF, that the developer's development plan is only feasible but for the creation of a TIF. And because some conversations have begun, a number of conversations have begun regarding the potential expenses of the developer with regard to stormwater, and interactions with the Mill Creek Water Reclamation District, we need the ability, staff needs the ability to be able to speak to SB Friedman about what the developer's potential budget is going to be for those infrastructure improvements. It's a parallel track. They'll still be reviewing the eligibility first, because that's the first step. But this gives the village the opportunity to be able to work with the consultant to start to talk about potential deal points in a redevelopment agreement, things to look out for, budgetary concerns, but initial budgetary review of the developer's work.
Mill Creek is a prime example of that, because they gave us a letter of 20 to 25 million. How much of that should be related to the developer's pocket versus TIF assistance, the but-for, to really do a deep dive and analysis of their financials they submit. I want to suss out I don't want to pay with TIF money. That's taxpayer money. It's just not the village's taxes. It's the school district and all the other taxing bodies' money eventually. So we got to just be very careful that we don't over-assist the developer.
Right, so if the community already had a TIF created, let's say there was a TIF over your downtown area, and you were reviewing the feasibility of a redevelopment within the village, within a TIF already, and the potential for providing increment to that developer, say it's a commercial site, whatever it might be, you would initially retain SB Friedman or another consultant similar to them for what in this realm is phase 2. It would be the first phase, because the TIF was already created. It may have been created 10 years ago. The village retained SB Friedman for phase 1. We're starting to think about phase 2, but questions are coming up in discussion between myself, Administrator Rooney, and the consultants, and they just want to make sure that the village is aware that this would be a separate scope of work. It's just like when HR Green has a separate scope of work for a different road improvement project. You approve a separate scope of work. All of these fees are subject to the development escrow agreement at this point, so they'll be reimbursed. Well, they would be paid by Shodine, but the consultant remains the village's, and the information that the consultant provides to the village is not
Okay.
shared with Shodine.
So it'd be
the
escrow.
Proprietary information.
Escrow initially, and if a TIF is eligible and
Then the
created,
TIF.
then it'd be TIF,
and
not
it would be
escrow.
TIF reimbursement.
Okay. Trustee Muir, then Trustee Hoffensberger.
Is there any benefit to us, locking in these hourly fees by locking this contract in now? I mean, if we waited on this, is this subject to a possibility of this going up?
It will increase based on whatever their standard hourly fee is for all of their clients, likely, on whatever schedule that they use for that. If we entered into this agreement, in a year from now, the village would be paying whatever their standard hourly fee is. It's not, if a dollar is not spent by the end of this year in this scope of work, they still have the right to increase their fee. It's just it's a notification of this is what their hourly services are for these types of services. Where they'd be locked in, the village would be locked into it as long as their standard hourly rate stays the same.
It's not a lot different than Kleinthorpe and Jenkins' engagement, really. You've got different rates.
The difference with the village attorney is that it's an yearly appointment, so,
Yeah.
unless, yeah, well, that is correct,
Trustee Hoffensberger.
yeah.
So if we approve this tonight, then we're basically just saying that you've got the ability to do this, I mean, as soon as you need to, but I'm assuming we're probably not gonna use this, for a little while yet, because we haven't gotten any, word
Right.
from SB Friedman yet that we're even qualifying, so you're just kinda getting it set up so that once we get to that point, up to the $19,000, you guys can start having conversations. Once it gets to the 19.5, then we'll have to get another confirmation of some kind. In the meantime, then, will the trustees just be advised of what we'll just see it on a warrant of what we're
Yeah,
paying?
If we engage them, say, with discussions with the Mill Creek Sanitary Water and Sewer.
So
you'll
we'll just
it.
see them on a warrant,
And you'll see it
up
on
to
a
the
warrant,
19.5.
and then you'll see
And
it,
then-
much like you do HR Green's
Okay.
engineering, or Kleinthorpe and Jenkins' work on development. It's an escrowed item that would be reimbursed by the developer.
But you're not really anticipating using this a lot right now, but soon, I suppose.
Soon.
I mean,
Possibly.
Possibly.
because
when we-
we're thinking January-ish,
With
possibly for the TIF.
We could have the eligibility report for the TIF by, say, Martin Luther King Day
Okay.
as a placeholder. But we could start engaging discussions with the Mill Creek Sanitary District
Okay,
next week.
and that would be all
Next-
through this,
yeah.
mostly with the sanitary district.
If the
Okay.
consultant's involved,
Kind
right. I mean, we
of
don't have a-
rosy, but okay.
Yeah, right. We don't have
Mm-hmm.
the village doesn't have a budget yet from the developer. The developer doesn't have a budget yet on their infrastructure improvements
Yeah.
because they're still engaging with the various districts to determine how much they are
They
going to
have
have
to
to
do.
construct.
Okay.
But once they do have that, then we can start speaking with the consultants about it.
Other questions? All right, hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Burson? Aye. Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye. Thank you all. That's it for action items. Now we got item 7, discussion items, number A or subsection A, whatever. Communication plan, village and police department. Administrator, you got that? Or chief got that?
You can go first and I'll talk second, but it's related to our webpage.
Okay, I
And-
just realized to turn my mic off again. Sorry.
Is this
Go ahead.
related to the webpage or social media? All right, well, the police department implemented a Facebook page for the police department about a week and a half ago. And this was with discussions prior with the board, the pros, the cons, how we're gonna do it. With Attorney Forte, we do not allow comments on our Facebook. It's simply an informational one. So if you look at it, it could be a road closure, it could be a lost animal, it could be an event like trick or treating come up. We don't really use it for anything else. If it's not good for the community, that is out there as just informational stuff. This is the reason the debates came into it. Before, I needed at least 4 officers that 24 hours a day could be able to monitor it. Not monitor it for comments, because there's no comments allowed. But if we went and put something up that said, you know, car accident at 47 and McDonald, roads are closed, avoid this area, well, we have an obligation to tell the community when that road is back open. It was a very long, drawn-out process. There was a lot of things worked out on it. Obviously, the no comment thing was added to it. We have officers that monitor it 24 hours a day, so if we do put something up there, we have the ability to take it off. I don't want to be the person that puts up information and then a resident complains, well, hey, you did this, I went a completely different route to work, and you failed to tell me 3 hours ago the road was back open. So we have that on our end. See, the police department's had no social media presence, and it's pretty sad, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I've asked every agency, small and large. Everyone else is telling me how they got Facebook, TikTok, X, whatever all these things are called now, Instagram, we had nothing. And the community said, it's pretty sad that you guys have nothing there to alert us. So I think it's a good first step. We'll see how it goes. Again, it's only been up now, I think, for a little bit over a week. And the big thing for us was to avoid the comments. There's so much that goes into it. I obviously didn't want to have the responsibility to try to mediate stuff. Things are going to be said that aren't appropriate. Liability is going to come back on the village and police department. So I think this will be a good way, and I think it will work. So, but we'll see how it goes. So far, the feedback's been good, but like I said, it's very new at this point.
And we know that there's going to be a greater reach than the people that, the limited number of folks that have, over the years, signed up for community counts. Facebook and any other social media, there's more residents that are going to be reached and track on that than community counts. Community counts helps, but it just doesn't reach the audience that well.
Community counts is good. The problem is, believe it or not, no matter how many times we advertise this, a lot of people do not know what community counts is. So to have a social media platform, even if it was Facebook, that we can continuously put a reminder out there that there's this other way you can get the information would be beneficial too, to maybe the person that's not paying attention to the Village of Campton Hills website, or to be able to put on there, hey, you can sign up for free and you can get this community counts. I think it'll have a lot of benefits to it.
Okay, what about on the
And
village
then
side?
on the webpage, we are coming to the end of our contract with our, actually, our provider that, an assistant that monitors that page. And we're going to have to sign like a $59 a month contract for Helping Hands to take over, just keeping it alive. That's a sad way to say it, but it's truth. It is. As we transition, because the tech committee is looking at options to do a more robust and more current to the way the world works webpage that'll be more forward-facing and getting information out. So then more to come on that. And Tracy, what else should I add that you've been working with Bill on?
For the webpage, that's it.
Okay.
Trustee Burson?
On the web page, I would like to add that we use a software package called, depending on when you started with it, either called Cassell or Civic Plus, right? And it's an integrated package that provides us with a lot of different capabilities. It did not provide us with web hosting capability. There was a different company called Civic Systems that did that. Very confusing. But they're the same company now, right? And so, owned by owned both by Governier, I believe, at this point. And so as I understand what the tech committee is working on is just saying, you know what, there's a lot of different people that do web hosting, but let's throw in with the people who integrate with the rest of our system, or at least are going to move in that direction. and people that are specialized in hosting web pages in the municipal environment. And so, you know, there will be some expenses associated with it, but I think the tech committee's done a lot of good work on it, and from everything I've heard, it sounds like the right way to go. If I may also have a comment about the Facebook.
Go ahead,
issue.
finish.
So we have a social media policy passed by ordinance, and it allows exactly the type of thing that Chief Levand is talking about, and I really, really applaud the police department for taking the initiative and going out there and doing this, because as you've done it without comments enabled and with thoughtful attention to the posts that you're making, it's just going to be an asset to the community. And one of the reasons why it's so important, and I don't think people get this right off the bat, is that when you post something on Facebook or Instagram or whatever your favorite thing is, it can then be shared. When we post something on Community Counts or on our webpage, it dies there, right? It doesn't go any further. No one forwards their Community Counts email to somebody else. No one says, hey, let's check out this hot link on our webpage. That's not how it works. And so if you actually want the information to advance through the community, then you put it on some type of social media where it's shareable. And so I brought this up, you know, about a month ago, that we've authorized this general concept, but we only initially authorized it for the village YouTube page. And so I think possibly, technically, the police department needs a resolution from us to do what they're doing, which I very much hope we will provide. And that we will also follow the lead of the police department and implement a similar informational Facebook page for the village. It's not a place for comment and commentary and discord and disagreement. It's a place for information, and that can then be shared to other places in the community. And so I'm really happy that you've done that, and hopefully it helps, you know, you pop the balloon and the village can, you know, bring our own Facebook page back alive.
And I apologize if I missed something on this, because I sit in a lot of meetings and I listen to a lot of stuff and I try to digest all of it. So I think somewhere in our social media policy conversations, I might have construed something a little differently. Otherwise, I would have brought it to the board for like approval. So I think I missed something on there before putting it out there like a week and a half ago. So.
Because there'd been commentary from this dais that we need to get better at communicating forward-facing, so I did tell him the board wants it, so do it.
Well, we could add it for, just
Well,
for
An
procedural.
enabling resolution.
Okay. Trustee Muir?
Yeah, Chief, I applaud you for getting that Facebook page out there, and I think it should just be amended to our current resolution. I also agree with Trustee Burson that if we can actually eliminate the comments, let's go ahead and do an official village Facebook page. But I'd also like to add that we ought to, at the very least, add Instagram to that mix. Now, that being said, you can post to Instagram and tell it to post to the Facebook page, so it's one post. And you can keep it from having comments too on Instagram.
Excellent. Other comments?
Just briefly regarding,
Go,
Just
finish.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
Concerning Cassell, the webpage, the technology committee is doing a good thing, but Cassell, they're probably the same company between Cassell, Civic Systems, and Civic Plus, but the Cassell and Civic Systems are renamed for Cassell, where Civic Plus is actually the sole web component. So I just want to kind of make sure everybody
Did I
understands.
reverse those?
Other comments? Council?
Just that the social media policy that the board did approve last year speaks to the village's social media accounts, and it talks about accounts of of the village, its departments, its subsidiary bodies,
Oh,
so.
then we're okay.
There is authority for the police department to create an account. I mean, the village clerk is like let's say the person that
Owner of
was
info.
the person that is responsible for the overall administration of the village's social media. But the policy allows for the police department to create
Okay.
an account.
Well, good on that then? Chief?
I did find out one interesting thing, 'cause I'm not very tech savvy, so I got rid of my
Yeah.
Facebook about 15 years ago. And I did realize times have changed. Before on Facebook, you used to be able to say no comments allowed, and that was it. So no matter what you put there, that's how, it's no longer that way. So every post you do, you have to put no comment on it. So I learned something.
That is a major change, and it's more, makes it more complicated.
Does that lock from Instagram? If you send it from Instagram, would that carry?
I'll have to check,
Okay.
but I will check.
Because if it's automatic that way, that would be the easiest way to do it.
There might be some way to do it.
Other comments? Excellent, thanks, everyone. All right, moving on to B, potential amendments to the permit fee ordinance for electric vehicle charging stations. Is this theoretical, or has somebody asked?
It's just not, wasn't in our chart that
Okay.
we approved last time. How do we want to handle? I mean, we've got it in the sense if they change the panel, because they'll have to have a 220 outlet in the garage instead of the 110 that's there. So it could have impact on that, but do we want to even make that a separate addressed item? I don't think we really covered it, I guess, was the commentary from some of the staff. Just to get Nick,
I'll
what's your
take,
thought?
I'll take prerogative of the chair before, if it's inside, if it's internal to the garage, I think it's covered. I think if it's external, someone wants to set up an outside one, I think that'd be different. Trustee Boatner?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the matrix doesn't cover a lot of things, like new electrical openings, doing a lot of things that you may require a permit for still. So I think it would fall under your remodel permit, adding new mechanical, electrical, plumbing, or,
Yeah,
if
if
you're
they're not adding to their box or a new box, we just let it go. If it's outside, a separate station outside, I guess that might be,
I think generally villages would look at that as a remodel. I mean,
unless it's like what you're describing, Mike.
Well, I mean, some of those are commercial sometimes. They're
Yeah.
just associated with stores, or we got.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a commercial, say the gas station
Right, they
put
might.
one line of pumps, not to be gas, but electric charging, we'd want to permit that probably, I think.
Trustee Muir?
So, now, I personally have a 220 in my garage, because I run some heavy equipment in there. But if
Yes,
somebody's,
welders require 220.
yeah, yeah. If somebody's buying an electric vehicle and they're putting if they have to put 220 in their house to run that, by the way, I wouldn't charge my electric vehicle in my garage, just saying. But, just putting it out there. That's a change to the box, okay? So how, the way things are set here, how would we know if they're putting in 220, if it's gonna fall under remodel? I mean, I mean, 220,
Taking it as in the sense that you said the last time, if your junction box, the power where all the fuses are at, if that is not changing, and you're just taking a 110 and you may rerun that one line to a different circuit as 220, that wouldn't require a permit. But if it exceeded the ability of the total power allowed in that existing box, they'd have to get a permit because they'd need a new, larger capacity. That's kind of how I was interpreting it, but I wanted clarity from everybody so we're all on the same page in how we interpret that.
Trustee Boatner?
so the intention when it was originally written was that if electrical outlets, switches, and lights are staying in the same place, they're not moving, you're not adding, you're not extending, then you do not need a permit. So if you have a 220-volt outlet receptacle in your garage and you're plugging your charger in, I mean, I don't think any village requires a permit for doing that. If you have to add a new receptacle, run pipe, and put a circuit in, this is something new. And how do you know if a resident checks the list and they decide, yes, I'm going to follow the rules and procedures of the village, then they're going to call in and request a permit. If they don't, then, you know, these are the rules that are in writing.
Trustee Burson?
I want to clarify how electric car charging works. So there is, a level 1 charger, which is you just plug into your 110 outlet, right? So whatever outlet you have, you plug in, right? And then there's level 2 charger, which is it's not just 220, it's 60 amp 220. So it's not like you just happen to have some 220 in your garage. 60 amp 220 is an electric stove, right? And most people don't have 60 amp 220 in their garage unless they were already running a lathe or something. I know this because we once ran a lathe in the garage and we required 60 amp 220. So
if you did the conversion to 220 with 60 amp, it may exceed your junction,
well, it's not just the box. You
Yeah.
have to run new
wire.
conductors and everything. You
Yeah.
gotta run big number 4 wires from the box out to the garage and to the charging station. It's a non-trivial thing.
So it should be permitted.
I
Yeah,
believe
and-
it should be.
and-
And not only that, but if you want to get the rebate for it, then you need an authorized installer.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to have a permit anyway.
And at some point, ComEd's not gonna install a new meter if you up your amperage without inspection on the meter socket. I mean, they just won't do that. They'll look for that sticker, so that's another.
You're actually supposed to inform them
Yeah.
if you install a level 2 charger.
Yeah.
And not only that, but if I understand it correctly, they require you to switch to hourly pricing.
Ah,
That's
yes,
true.
That's true.
Because they don't want you to take advantage of the cheap overnight power. Bernetti?
So I have a question in general then. How many permits have been requested for electric chargers in people's garage to date?
Good question. Do we know?
But like,
I
almost none?
probably almost none is probably the answer.
And the follow-up question is, how many electric cars are in Campton Hills today?
We have
I
more
would
than-
tell you there's quite a few.
It's not almost none.
Yeah.
A lot, but a lot of people
Maybe they're just
don't
doing the
have
low.
level 2
Yeah,
chargers.
maybe they just do level 1.
There's a lot of folks that just have they do it overnight on the 110. It takes 8-10 hours, but if,
Or they pay money at the grocery store.
Yeah, I would tell you, I think there's electric chargers in garages. And whether it meets the 60 amp or whatever, I could tell you that it's not being done at 110 because the cars are being charged much faster, so. Again, just to raise a point that not everybody asks for permits.
Okay, so we clear then? You clear? Turn on your mic. Turn on your mic. Mike. No, this thing.
Sorry.
I keep forgetting to.
we'll require a permit and we'll make sure they are aware of that piece you said about ComEd.
Okay. And trustee person's thing too, if they're changing the level, the ComEd's gonna wanna know too.
Yep.
Okay,
The wires.
Any
are
other
very
thoughts?
different.
excellent. All right, we're gonna move on to item C. What's up with the generator? Who's giving us a generator report?
The chief, he's back, but we need a little more time to get some fidelity on the different price points to install. So we're not done. We had
Okay,
a week that we didn't anticipate.
okay. Go chief.
So I think who should assist in this, once again, is so far the most responsive person to this whole installation process had been, and forgive me, I forget the name of that company.
That met us here, JRC.
JRC, like, they gave us two quotes, two size generators and what the installation was. If we go to them and say, thanks, we have a generator, is this what the installation fee would be if we provided our own generator? Their quote was actually very reasonable for it, considering, and they were super responsive, because many of these other people that are supposed to be providing quotes are not very responsive. So I'm not sure if Trustee Boatner would like to assist in that, or if you'd like me to reach out to him directly.
I'd be happy to assist with it. I was communicating with him. He was very responsive, had the same, I asked everybody to come out and consult and he was the guy who came out multiple times. Was very thorough, so anything you need assistance with, I'm happy.
And
to.
Ray from Airflow was more expensive and concerned about how we pour the pad and encase the generator from the county, and Chief has solved that piece with the county. The county's willing to pour the pad, help us on that, as well as fabricate the enclosure to protect the generator.
Trustee Benetti?
If you want another quote, I've got a guy that'll give you one. They do a lot of work for Siemens right now, so they're very reputable and can do it. So if you want somebody else, just let me know.
I think it'd
I'd
be good if we
appreciate
can
it,
have
yeah.
3, because we'll get Airflow, we've got his quote, we can get, I always say JCR, but it's JRC. So we can get that, and if Siemens person could, we'll just send to Trustee Benetti the specs that we have from JRC or Airflow so that they know what they're bidding the same project.
Okay, that sounds pretty promising.
And then then we'll have a low recommended bidder, hopefully for the 4th of November,
Excellent.
if we get the quotes in. Otherwise, it'll go to the 18th.
You just have to, just have to ask for the 3. If they don't return them in time, you could just say, we sought 3, we only got 2, if we're all okay with that. All right, that's everything on our discussion items. Now we're on to item number 8, additional items from president, trustees, or attorney. Trustee Boatner.
I wanted to backtrack a little bit, and Tim, if I could ask you Treasurer McPhillips, if I could ask you one more question. With the escrow, the way it's set up right now, of course, the escrow isn't going, any escrow wouldn't show up on the financial report. It's not revenue, it's just a separate account. When we do have an expense that is reimbursed by an escrow account, does that reimbursement now get reflected in general revenue? Is that the line? Where does that reimbursement end up showing on the financial report when it gets moved out of one account and into the other account?
So are you referring to that schedule that I created last month?
I saw the schedule that you had in your office, but on the report that we have that actually shows, so we show the money out. When the money gets moved from escrow account into Village of Campton Hills account.
I would reduce the expense that are related to that.
And that is what happens currently?
No, the expense has not been reduced.
So
right now, we've got a choice to do by account. We could
Okay.
do a general ledger like the village has done in the past, or for this one, because it's a more prominent, we could set up its own separate checking account if that's your desire.
No, that's not what he's asking, I'm sorry. I received the
Okay.
money, let's
Yep.
call it $50,000.
Mhm.
I hit the cash account, got the money for my cash account,
Sits there,
and I
yep.
hit a liability account.
Mhm.
Because as of now, we haven't offset any expense. So what I will do is I will reduce the liability and then reduce the expense also. So our expenses will go down.
So that's like the simple way of doing it. Instead of doing another line item, you're just going to actually offset the actual expense. It's either gonna go away as the escrow reimburses, so that'll be the future process. Awesome.
Tim, explain when the developer pays the 15 and then paid the 74, that's not a revenue, that's the liability.
Cash and the liability.
Yes.
Trustee Burson.
There has been an ask for a separate bank account, which is not specified anywhere. It's not, there's been a representation that it's required based on the annexation agreement, but it's not. The annexation agreement specifies that there would be a separate account, not a separate bank account. Obviously, if it was intended to be a separate bank account, it would have said bank account. So by account, we obviously mean funds accounting. And the problem for me is that you're doing this effectively off book. And I don't, you're doing this effectively off book by having a separate spreadsheet for the escrow account. I don't understand why the escrow account is effectively any different than the MFT account, right? Money comes in, money goes out. I mean, to me, regardless of the fact that in the case of the escrow account, we're mixing up, some balance sheet and P&L accounts differently than we would in other cases. But either way, we're talking about a fund. We're talking about an account. And so on our financials, what I would like to see is I would like to see the escrow account. I would like to see what went into the escrow account and what came out of the escrow account exactly like I would see it in the MFT account. And I feel like if we could see that without having to go hunt for it or contact you or Mark to get a spreadsheet that shows it off to the side somewhere, then we might not be as concerned about whether it was a separate bank account.
I think what I just get a consensus we need to do is a special report on Shodine escrow each month.
Get a mic, Tim, get a mic.
To be clear, when the village administrator asked me to come up with that schedule, I was not even aware it was an escrow account. It was mostly just internally to keep track. I would not have created the schedule that way if I knew it was going to be an escrow account. In regards to it being a separate bank account, to me, that would determine, how long is, my preference is how long is this going to be in existence for and how much money.
Years.
I had communicated to Mark, I was surprised the developer didn't say, hey, it must be in an escrow account, it must be interest bearing, and the interest stays with the developer.
Right.
That's typically my limited experience with working with escrow accounts. The escrow, we have individual escrow accounts in our GL for other developments. Some of them are pretty old and stale and still balances out there. None of them have separate bank accounts, but I think they were smaller projects. I think it's just a matter of preference for the board.
Trustee Hopkins-Berger?
So first, I think my argument was completely mischaracterized. I didn't say that the annexation agreement required it. I said it was actually required by our own code, which says that we have to set up a trust. I forget how they word it. It's a trust.
Trust and agency?
Yes, thank you, account. And the reason that it does matter, and you all can do whatever you want, I'm just making the recommendation because I think it makes the most sense, and it is usually best practices, but the escrow funds are not our funds. We are a fiduciary for those funds. They come to us from Shodine, and we are given a list of items that we can spend the money on based on our contract that we do have in the annexation agreement. And it lists out the things that they are going to reimburse us for. And so it's based on that. So we are sending, from what I understand, monthly, invoices and things like that over to Shodine, and they're approving what we can spend the money on. It's not our money. It is escrow money that we're a fiduciary for. So at the end of the day, anything that's in that escrow account that's not ours goes back to Shodine. It is just not good accounting practice to ever commingle escrow funds that are not yours with your general fund, because it's not revenue, it's not income, it doesn't belong there. Can it be done? Sure. If you have the most impeccable accounting skills available, but we have treasurers that, come and go with different administrations. We can look back at other times where we've tried to, take account money and try to set it aside and try to figure out later on what happened to that money. And we've had other issues with that. And so why take the risk and not just, if you put it in a separate fund, and the thing is, you don't transfer that money into the general fund and write the checks out. It's in a bank account that's a checking account. So the escrow money goes in, and anything that's going to be reimbursed by the escrow gets written out of the escrow account. And so at the end of the day, like I was saying, Tim and I met earlier today, and he actually said, given now the parameters, and I can give the contract provision to everyone, it's not going to be just a couple of months. It says that the escrow is going to be in place until the public improvements are given over to the village, which is, Carmen, is that a couple months?
No.
Thank you. And so this thing could go on for years. And so the cleanest way to do it, the safest way, is to put it into another fund. And then when someone says, where did the escrow funds go? We can pull up an account and everything's there. Everything that went in is there. Everything that went out is there. It's not commingled anywhere where, we can have the best of intentions. And if you have bad accounting, or you have mistakes in accounting, or you have someone doesn't do a good job with the accounting, it just opens us up to liability, and it doesn't make any sense. So you all do what you want. I'm making the recommendation. I think it's a smart recommendation. I think it's the safest recommendation. But I know other people have said, I've done it this way for 30 years. We can do it however you want. But Tim and I talked earlier, and he said, had he known that it wasn't just going to be a 5-month account, he would also agree that a separate account should be opened up. I think and the size of the dollar amount, and also when I went to IML over, a couple weeks ago, I specifically went up and asked several people during IML this exact situation, and I mentioned what we were doing, the amount of money involved, the project involved, the amount of time potentially involved, and not a single person told me that best practices would be to leave it in the same account. They all said, do yourself a favor. In fact, the person who did the actual the treasurer section said that in her small village, and I'm not advocating this, and I've talked to other trustees about this, in her small village, she has like 20 different accounts, one for this TIF, one for this TIF, one for this. I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but it certainly does make your books nice and clean. It makes them nice and straightforward. It makes them very easy to follow, and we all know right now we need to have nice, clean books and make sure we're following things accurately. It might be a little bit more work for Tim, but at the end of the day, it makes sense. Like I said, I am one voice. You guys can all decide what you want to do, but that's my recommendation.
If we don't do it that way, who's ever here in 2 or 4 years from now will be kicking our butts, because we just absolutely
And
need to
that
do
was
it.
my other comment, was that, down the road, we're all looking at other funds and other escrows that were put out in the accounting world, and we're looking to see, okay, what happened to this money? We're doing it right now, as we all know, with one account, correct? And we're trying to kind of back into it and figure out what happened there. And what I had also spoken with Tim about earlier was, if they had done that with that account and everything was there and everything went in there and came out of there, we'd know exactly what was spent. It would have been nice and easy. It would have been very straightforward. So that's just an example that has hit us recently, that we've spent a lot of time and angst over trying to figure out, did we spend it all? Did we not spend it all? Where is all the money? Where is it? And I know we figured it out, but we could have saved ourselves a lot of heartache and a lot of headache by just having it in one account, and then you know exactly, money in, money out. What was it in for? What did it come out for? And I don't own a bank. I don't get anything extra by setting up another bank account. It doesn't do anything for me personally at all. I have no personal agenda here. I am just saying, to be the safest thing for this village, I recommend this. I don't understand why it's even a battle, to be honest.
Trustee Muir.
I agree with the separate account. I don't necessarily know it needs to be a checking account, because I don't want the appearance of possibly double dipping with taking care of expenses that are being put on our financial sheets, right? I would suggest that it gets transferred to a GL. I'd also even recommend the suggestion that that particular GL account for our current escrow that says escrow deposit actually be changed to what LaFox of Campton Hills escrow, or whatever we want to call it, but separate account where that money's deposited, because it's not ours, and then go ahead and transfer it to the GL. That way, when we mark the GLs on the warrants, that way it's there. Then I'd also recommend, just like the insurance reimbursement, that it's showing that it's being reimbursed. It's not the bottom line, that it's hitting our budget. Is it maybe clear as mud, maybe? I don't know.
Trustee Benetti?
So I just have a question, because I'm confused. So we're talking about bank accounts, and we're talking about GL accounts. So regardless of whether we have a separate bank account for this or not, you still have to account for it in the financials, right?
As of now, if I may interrupt.
Yeah, yeah.
Mike,
Microphone.
As of now, it's been properly accounted for. The cash has been received, it's reflected in our cash account, and we recorded a liability, because as trustee Hopfensberger said, it's a liability to us because it's not our money. It's the client's money, I guess, for lack of a better term. So as of now, it's properly accounted for.
Okay, so- Yeah, so, but my question is, whether we have a separate bank account or not, you still have to account for it in the financials, in the GL, and separate it out so we can actually see what money's going in and what money's going out. So my question is, what does having the separate bank account, and I'm not for this or against this right now, I just want to understand it. What benefit does having the separate checking account give us if we have the accounting already in place to cover it all anyway?
Well, you do have the accounting in place, and we've done this in the past. We have individual GL accounts for other escrow accounts, and it's in our cash account. It's not in a separate financial entity account. The reason why this is different is, one, because this may last a long time. I still don't have clarity on that, and you're talking about large dollar amounts. A new kerfunkel that has now been presented to me is, I did not realize we may have a internal document that says we have to come up with a separate account. I will defer to legal counsel on that. We could do this either way, and I think trustee Hopfensberger said that. You can do it either way. She thinks it's cleaner, I think is the term she used. Is it more work for me? Yes, but I think we have to take all the information, get some clarity on how long this is gonna be, how much money it's gonna be, and maybe have legal counsel look into if we've designed a ordinance or resolution saying we should have a separate account.
So does the bank account give you a checks and balance to say, okay, hey, the ledger account says there's X amount in it, I go to the checking account, there's X amount in it, we're all good? I mean, what benefit?
To your point, that is a benefit, because you will have a checking account that says this is how much should be in there. Let's call it $5,000. My GL should say, this is how much cash we have, this is the liability is $5,000, it should match. So it's kind of like a separate, independent source of data you're tying to, as opposed to just being our internal records. Would I do this for all the escrow accounts we have? No, I would not suggest we open up a bank account for every small little escrow account that we have. I don't know how big this is gonna be. If it's gonna be big, I would just, I think to be prudent and err on caution, open up a separate account.
What's your definition of big?
Big, anything over $100,000, I'd say.
I think it's there.
Length of time, anything
Again,
over a year.
I'm just trying to understand.
No, I
so.
appreciate it.
Counsel?
So the village code under the property development section does require a trust and agency account. It doesn't specifically say a separate bank account, but the way that it can certainly be interpreted and read would be compatible with a separate bank account. It requires a trust and agency account, also known as an escrow account, and it says separate sub-accounts for each individual escrow. So if you have individual projects or developments, you can have a separate, you don't have to have if you were to go with a bank account approach, you don't have to have a separate bank account for each development, but you could have a standard Campton Hills escrow account, bank account with sub-accounts or GLs under that for each individual escrow. It's done both ways with an account of this size. Certainly could make sense to do it at an outside account. It's not, it is going to be over 6 figures. It likely will be, and it will be in place for some time. At some point, the expenses that the village incurs will change over to TIF reimbursable expenses that will no longer be paid by the developer, will be paid out of the TIF fund, but that is only until the development, if a TIF is created, creates increment to reimburse those expenses. So That will depend on if and when a redevelopment agreement is created between the parties. If a TIF is created, what that cutoff date is that the developer will stop reimbursing the village for any expenses that it might have, engineering, legal, things like that. But that the TIF would then pay.
I think,
And to trustee Benetti's point, you didn't really answer it, Tim. There's still GL accounting you're going to do with a separate bank account. You're still going to have,
true.
that was his question, and yes, you were right.
Is it wrong to think that a future auditor would be happier if it was in a separate account? Easier for them to track it,
Yeah.
easier to get a clean audit?
Auditor would be happier with a relationship of that size over $100,000, I think, if there's a separate account.
The village code requires that it's subject to audit, just like the village's.
No, I'm not saying
other
it's not. I
accounts
just
and funds and-
think about how quick the audit
Sure.
would be.
It's just not part of the
Who had
budget.
the hand up? Trustee Benetti?
I just had a question regarding to the TIF. So does the TIF money end up going in there as well?
No, there
Okay.
would be a
All right.
separate,
So I just wanted to be clear on that.
there'd be a separate fund created for that.
Trustee Burson, then trustee Hoffensberger.
So escrow accounts have been a problem for a long time. And at least one of the problems that we have with escrow accounts today stems from a prior conversion. Village used to use QuickBooks. Things were converted from QuickBooks into the current system. Detail was lost along the way. And so my understanding is that we carried forward balances of these escrow accounts, but not anything else. Escrow accounts are tricky because it's not just what you collected against a liability. It's what you collected against a liability against expenses, right? And so the amount of the liability continually gets chipped away by the actual expenses. So liability gets replaced by expenses. And so what we have been phenomenally bad at, as near as I can tell, is that process. We take the money, we record the liability, but then when the expenses come in, we don't offset it. And so we've done this for many escrow accounts in the past, incorrectly. And so my concern is that those expenses against the liability get accounted for correctly, whether it's in a separate bank account or not, because it doesn't really matter what bank account it's in if you're not, and I don't mean you personally, but if we are not doing the bookkeeping properly of that escrow account. And if it sounds like there's potentially an extension of the notion of trust and agency for any escrow account. And if that's the case, then we're talking about an escrow account for the Shodine development, because that's separate and special, and possibly a separate physical escrow account, bank account, for the rest of the basket of messed up escrows, right? And so how many bank accounts ultimately are we going to end up with? Because proliferation of bank accounts is a primary risk, for fraud. And so the more bank accounts we have, every bank account we add multiplies our fraud risk. And so I would like to make sure that as we're contemplating adding an additional bank account for this escrow, that it doesn't lead to an additional bank account for the other basket of escrows. And then, by the way, it doesn't make any sense to me to have anything that isn't a checking account. So I don't know how you're moving money in and out of these things if it's not, if they're not checking accounts. And then, given that there's conversation about how checks are signed or not, that leads us into the conversation of, is this going to all be ACH? Because if it's not, then that's a whole different problem. I don't understand why we're talking about physical checks at all in 2025, going into 2026. So there's a lot of issues associated with this escrow account, and if there's a consensus that a separate account protects the village better, that's okay with me, but the separate don't be lulled into a false sense of complacency that because we've created a bank account, that we don't have to do the proper accounting. And understand that if we did the proper accounting, you don't need the separate bank account. You can feel better about it, it's not wrong, but it's actually doing the accounting correctly that matters, and not whether there is a separate bank account.
Point taken. Trustee Hoffensberger?
So kind of to address trustee Muir's comment about having the funds kind of then go from one account to the other, and that would completely that would completely mess up the entire point of having the separate account. And I think part of the problem is trying to understand how this escrow is supposed to work. So if you look at how the contract is written, it's never supposed to get to zero. As soon as it gets down to, and I forget the dollar amount, I think it's 10,000? 10 or 15? It'll go to 25 now. Oh, it's gonna go to, like, the lowest is 25? Yeah, so it's always supposed to be funded, so there should never be an issue of not being able to write the check out of that account. So when the expense comes in, the money should be there. It should be a true escrow, not a reimbursement account. So it's not, we wait for the check to be written and then we get reimbursed. That's not how it's supposed to work. It is supposed to work like a true escrow. So money's there, we get the expense in. If there isn't enough money to pay that expense, we ask for that money to be put in. Then the check is written out. So it all takes place in that one account. And that makes it nice and neat and clean and all in one area. That makes sense?
Sorry, sidebar with another
Yeah,
municipal employee.
But in practical terms, we can have pretty steady on the billing, because we get it on a regular basis from Kleinthorpe and Jenkins, but the engineering work sometimes comes in, it's 40
Bumpy.
grand or it's 10 grand, or 60, because they did a lot of, like right now, the next invoice from HR Green's gonna be very large, because they're doing a lot of that work for the, to get to the PUD preliminary approval at the planning and zoning, and there's gonna be I've never seen escrow accounts where the balance of whether it's 25 or a 50 number is always enough to pay all the invoices that come in. The developer always makes good on it and trues it up, but
It's not always
It's-
going to be enough, but that is the way it's set up, and so you just, you go on that basis. That doesn't mean that there won't be a time when there's an expense that is reimbursed, when there is an occasion where that happens, but we also have the understanding with like HR Green and some of our other vendors that they can wait a week and get that check in. I mean, these are all people that we're working with very closely. I mean, most of the people that are being reimbursed with this are our attorney, our engineer, and, people that are very close to the village, and so they understand how this is working. And so we get a notification immediately out to Shodine that the fund is too low, we need it to be refunded, and we get that done.
Well, we're also only subject to the Prompt Payment Act too, so we have 45 days roughly, plus or minus, before 60 at the far end, so there's plenty of time to get that reimbursed. Trustee Benetti?
But let me ask a question. So we received kind of a spreadsheet that showed as we were incurring expenses, there was basically an accounting showing how much money was in and not in. But those expenses that were listed on there weren't necessarily paid, right? Or were they?
They were showing up in your P&L. So your expenses now are inflated because we did not use an escrow account initially set up
Okay.
I'm sorry, Teresa, I have trouble with your.
So we did
German name.
we did actually front the money. It wasn't like,
We
hey,
did.
we've incurred all these bills. We went to Shodine and said, write us a check for X amount of dollars we spent the money
We
and
spent that
reimbursed.
money.
I would agree then with trustee Hoffman.
Yeah, so what Teresa's trying to say is that if we had an escrow account and a bank account set up, when we incurred those invoices, they would never show up on your P&L. We would just reduce the liability that we have with the developer. And I think that's probably the appropriate way to do it.
Okay.
And again, because, in my opinion is, if you don't mind,
Go.
Because of the size and the time, I would just go with a separate bank account and be done with it.
good discussion. I think we're at consensus, so get that set up, or, yeah, all right. Any other stuff on the good of the order type of thing? So not only do I have the update here, everybody, we got the North Stars are now 7-1. Little tumble with Wheaton Warrenville South, who was also 7-1. But so that's one of my daughter's alma maters. Their other alma mater, Georgia Tech, is now ranked 7th in the country. 7-0 start, first time since the 50s or something like that. Any other for the good of the order? Okay. Then I would look. Go ahead.
There has been some discussion about having a committee of the whole meeting between the board and the finance committee. It seems like something that's, overdue at this point.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we could get that on the agenda before the end of the year.
That work for everybody?
And do you want that committee of the whole to meet with the finance committee once
Joint.
a quarter?
Let's start with the first time.
Yeah.
All right, there we
Some-
go.
I mean, getting into budget season, I think that'd be a great idea. Maybe we have 1 or 2 going in the budget, and then maybe we can skip one in the summer, that type
Yeah,
of thing. But I
right.
think
Okay.
we kind of all were talking about that. We all good with that? All right, cool.
If I may?
Go.
Depending on the timing, maybe we could have the committee of the whole at the finance committee when the auditors present the audited financial report.
That'd be a good reason to have them here. Yep.
That'll be a timing issue. though,
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, that's a good reason to have them here. All right, last call for anything. Otherwise, I will move on to item 8. All right, looking at motion 9. Sorry, looking for a motion to enter closed session pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1, to discuss employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or contractors of the village. Do I have that motion? I have a motion from Benetti. Do I have a second? Second from Hopfensberger. Roll call, please.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muir?
Aye.
And for the public, such that you are, we will be taking no action when we resume, when we exit